this weekend, as you know, the streets of Dublin will be lined with people celebrating Pride 2025. We have been celebrating it all this week on the show. And the person who will be marshalling the whole thing as the Grand Marshal is Ruadhan O'Criodain. Lovely to have you in.
Thanks so much for having me, Kathryn. Really excited to be here.
Well, come here. I mean, you talk about being excited to be here, but you must be like, are you nervous? Obviously you're hugely excited for the day itself on Saturday, being in charge of Pride 2025. It's pretty cool.
It is a huge honour. It's not something I ever saw coming from me, and not this year. But I'm really, really excited. I'm going to be marching with my charity shout out. So there'll be a big gang of us up the front. I won't be on my own in a car. So that's something that I was kind of scared of or nervous about. And
having to sit and do
have
the
to sit and wave. It's not really my vibe.
Right, okay. So you'll actually be walking. You'll be marching.
I'll be marching.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned Shout Out there. You are the executive director of Shout Out, and you have been an avid campaigner for years. Like, you've dedicated your whole life to education and inclusion. And the theme this year of Pride is taking liberties. So explain to us what that means.
So 10 years ago, Ireland and kind of the LGBT community in Ireland took two huge liberties with the marriage equality referendum, which we've been kind of celebrating the anniversary of for the past few months and really marking that anniversary. But another really significant liberty that people sometimes overlook or maybe forget about is the Gender Recognition Act, which was a huge liberation piece for trans people in Ireland. So that's why I've been selected in particular to kind of represent that moment and to talk about what's next for trans people and how we can defend our rights.
And so and it's exactly that. Like, we know and we hear about the marriage equality all the time, but the Gender Recognition Act, this is the legal recognition for trans people in Ireland. I'm right in saying that. Yeah. And then it was also 10 years since the Children and Family Relationships Act as well. Mm-hmm. So remind us, that was again recognising diverse family makeups, which kind of covers everything from adoption to guardianship to
surrogacy. And I will say of the Children and Family Relationships Act that parts of that act took some time to actually come into legislation and come into implementation. And there are still some LGBT families who haven't been covered by the law. There's still some families who are left out in terms of their guardianship. So that's also something that the government needs to look towards amending and updating. And it did take a significant amount of time even for all of the aspects of that act to be covered. So not all of those parents have been fully recognised, but for those who are, it's again a huge weight off their minds to just be the appropriate guardians of their children and be seen as the true parents of their children.
True parents. Yeah. So the Gender Recognition Act, that's why you were selected this year representing trans people. Can I ask you about your experience of realising you were trans, and I suppose what it means and how far we've come, and I suppose also how far we need to go?
Yeah, so I came to know that I was trans really during the COVID-19 lockdowns. All that time on your own, not being around people, not having to dress in a particular way or not having to look or behave in a particular way around people gave me some time to just, I suppose, be who I wanted to be and reflect on who I wanted to be. And around that time, I was beginning to learn a little bit more about what it meant to be trans. I mean, I'm 31 now. When I was growing up, trans people were not really visible. And when they were, it was as a joke. It was to be kind of the butt of the joke. It was to be mocked. And particularly trans women were usually being made the butt of the joke in film and TV. So trans men like me, non-binary people, they weren't really on my radar until around my mid-20s. So I kind of went through that period of reflection in COVID, and towards the end of lockdown, I started coming out to my family, my friends, and I went and got my gender recognition cert, which is what's available through the Gender Recognition Act. And it is a really beautiful thing to have in Ireland. It gives trans people that bit more dignity and that bit more safety and privacy as we move through the world. There's a lot of other issues in Ireland, particularly around trans healthcare and around some of the transphobia in the media and online. But the average person that you meet is so kind, and the Gender Recognition Act is really something to be celebrated.
And so when you look at the Gender Recognition Act in Ireland and then you look at the dismantling, I'm just thinking of over in the States, and you look at the dismantling of diversity and inclusion departments and all of that, how does that sit with the trans community now? I mean, it must be terrifying in one way that you go, like, we make such huge leaps and then all of a sudden it must feel like a huge step back.
It's so frightening to think that progress can just be taken away. So like just at the flick of the fingers. And we've seen this in the States, we've seen this in the UK. And I suppose for me, the most visual signifier of my gender recognition is my passport that says male and has the right name on it. What we're seeing now in the States is that trans people are having their passports sent to them with the wrong gender on it. Their gender recognition is being overturned or stripped back. Even people like Hunter Schafer, this fairly famous trans actress from Euphoria, she received a passport with the gender marker that says male on it. She's been out as trans for years. She's been living comfortably as a trans woman, and she's now having her rights and her recognition overturned. For her or for any trans person traveling around the world with the wrong passport or with a passport that doesn't reflect who you are, it outs you, it makes you unsafe. So the likes of that legislation and those overturns that we're seeing in the States is terrifying, as well as what's happening to trans people in the UK, where the Supreme Court brought down a decision just again kind of overruling the rights of trans people, and particular trans women. It's really frightening to think, and I'm glad that we don't have that in Ireland, but we also need to remind people why it is so urgent to maintain our liberties here.
Yeah. And Pride used to be called Liberation Day.
Yeah,
didn't know
Gay
that.
Liberation Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it still is in some countries, and I think liberation is something that we're always working towards. I think we feel much freer now. We've achieved so much, but liberation is something that I think for a lot of us in the LGBT community, we think of as liberation for everybody. So I might be very free now. I might have a lot of privilege now as a trans adult who has got access to healthcare, got access to gender recognition. But if you're a young person in a school in Roscommon and you're struggling to come out, you've got unaccepting parents, you're not liberated.
Yeah.
So liberation is about that full acceptance in
And I
society.
suppose as well, it's a reminder of what the liberties that you fought for. Like, we've got so far already, and it's also to kind of keep it on the table and to keep fighting and to not forget how much you guys have fought in order to get to where we are. So when you look at how far we've come, what would you like to see happening next? I mean, what's next for the LGBTQ plus community?
So I think for a lot of us in the LGBTQ plus community, and not just trans and non-binary people, but also our incredible allies right across the spectrum, the number one issue is trans healthcare. Trans healthcare, Ireland has got the worst trans healthcare in the European Union. We're much worse than other countries that are otherwise behind us on trans rights and things like recognition. The waiting list is anywhere up to 10 years.
Oh my God.
There are currently 2,000 people on a waiting list for a service that sees a few hundred people a year. There's no trans healthcare in Ireland for young people, and that is something which has been debated at length in the media, even as a concept, and kind of the voices of trans young people have been spoken over in a big way, but the system simply doesn't exist here. So we're debating something that doesn't exist in Ireland. There's huge barriers to access, and when a lot of trans people do access the service, they found it quite stigmatising. Some trans patients have been asked to bring their parents into interviews, even as adults have been asked to bring their parents to assessments. So we need a complete overhaul of the trans healthcare system, and we'll be looking to the Minister for Health and the HSE for what that new model of care is going to look like and how they can deliver a gender affirming model of care for trans people, and one that's in line with international best standards.
Okay. All right, back to the weekend and the celebrations and all of that, because the parade is starting Saturday, 12:30. You are going to march down O'Connell Street, down Eden Quay to Custom House Quay, across Talbot Memorial Bridge. Are you, I hope, what shoes are you wearing? I need to know. Are we in heels or are we in flats? I hope you're in flats.
Sensible runners. I'm a sensible runners guy all the way.
All the way. Okay, so down Eden Quay to Custom House Quay, Talbot Memorial Bridge, and finally ending up at Merrion Street Lower. So it's going to be a great day. Everyone is going to get out and support it. It's always such an amazing weekend in the city, and wish you the best luck and congratulations. What's your plan for the weekend after you finish being the star of the show at the parade?
My plan for the weekend, I'm going to chill out and catch the vibes in Merrion Village a little bit. It's really nice, and it's good, I think, after the hecticness of the parade, for anybody who wants to come along, just soak that up. I'll do my big old speech and then I'll relax. I'll go party with my friends and I love the queer scene in Dublin. I think the clubs here are amazing. I worked in the clubs here for a long time, and I'll just go soak that up because Pride takes over the city now. We all celebrate together, and I think it's one of the happiest, most easygoing parties Dublin gets to see each year. So I'll just enjoy that and be with my pals.
Ruadhan O'Criodain, Grand Marshal of the Dublin Parade. Great to have you with us, and Executive Director of Shout Out. Keep doing the work you're doing because you do a great job.